Hello everyone, welcome to the video lecture of Big Data Analytics. Myself Bhanu Prakash, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Vignan Institute of Information Technology, Visakhapatnam. Before I start the topic, I would like to go for the contents of unit number 1. So today in this lecture, I'll be covering one of these syllabus contents, but I'll just want to give an insight of a list of topics that we have. So first one is Introduction to Big Data. Second one is Google File System, Hadoop Distributed File System, daemons of HDFS, that is a name node, data node, job tracker and task tracker. And I would like to give an introduction about a configuration of Hadoop clusters and finally configuration of XML files. In this lecture, we will be covering a first part, that is Introduction to Big Data. Today's lecture's content will be, in the part of introduction, I would like to go for different kind of sources from where big data is being generated and different characteristics of big data, different types of data that is available, and finally application part of the big data. Objectives would be, student will be able to understand what exactly big data is, and he can be easily understood about characteristics as well as different types of big data. And finally, the outcome would be, after the completion of this lecture, student can be able to understand the objectives successfully. Let's start what is big data. I would like to explain this topic with a basic example which is very familiar with us. Let's consider a smartphone user who is using his mobile phone for many different kind of applications in his daily life. For example, a smartphone user, if he uses different kind of applications like Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, etc. for different kind of data source generations, can we imagine that what amount of data that this particular user can generate at a particular time of 1 month? Yes, that's true. A user can generate or capable of generating a maximum of 40 exabytes of data per month. That's what a statistic says. And if you consider this exabyte, let's try to understand that in terms of figures. Here we can see that 1 exabyte would be equal to, when coming to a binary form, you can see a lot of zeros which you can't even count at a glance. So that much amount of data that a particular person is generating through his mobile phone, continuously using it for 30 days. Now the problem is how to manage the data. Now assume that this is a database where data need to be stored, data need to be processed, data need to be retrieved. Now the problem would be how you are going to manage that. That would be a big question for everyone. In this picture, this is a place where big data solutions comes into picture. So now let's put all these things together to form a statement of big data. Right? Definition would be, big data is something which is a collection of large data sets that cannot be processed by traditional processing systems. Means earlier in 80s there will be a processing mechanism where it can store only less amount of data for the processing. But here a user is generating a lot amount of data where multiple users can generate more data that is even we can't understand. Now this is all about the definition of big data. The next topic would be different sources. Now coming to the part of sources, let's understand, I have been telling that data is being generated from different sources, but I have just gone through a slide where a mobile phone is generating a lot of data. But let's understand in the real world with the real applications where we can see this lot of data that is being generated. First one would be black box data. Most of you heard that an aeroplane may travel from a source to destination in a particular amount of time. But the point is how much amount of data that will be generated by this particular aeroplane for the transmission of base station. Like example, if there is a base station, assume that it's a source station and assume that it's a destination station. This particular plane has to communicate continuously until it reaches a specific destination. That would be called as a black box data because a part of a black box will be existing in the plane where the recordings will be stored. It can be of terabytes of data. Now next one would be social media data. This is very familiar for us where we have been using different kind of social media data. For example, consider there is something called as Facebook. According to Forbes statistics says that every day per minute there will be almost that much amount of 5 million of likes or shares or comments are being posted in the big data. Now coming to WhatsApp, you all very familiar with the WhatsApp where you can send messages to your family members, friends, or any of your colleagues, every day you have been sharing things in the WhatsApp in the form of messages, images, and videos. And coming to next, we have Instagram, where people are very familiar with it, and they'll be communicating with each other or posting their own content on the Instagram with a million content information. The next one would be YouTube, where every user is watching different videos in the YouTube starting from his day. The next one would be Twitter, where lots of tweets will be placed from different people from different parts of the globe, which will be million in count. The last one would be mails. Everybody is having their own account, or people may have multiple accounts to communicate large text in the form of mails. Now, this is a data that is being generated if you consider from a single person. Now, assume that everybody is having their own accounts from the respective sources, and they can generate huge amount of data. Next one would be search engine data. Our day starts with searching something. Like if you search for a data, you need to go for any of the information provider like Google or Yahoo or Bing. You are getting this information from Google, which is a large data store where you are picking up with your service request. Now, let's get into the topic called as different characteristics that a big data contains. Till now, we have seen different sources from where data can be generated, and we have seen what exactly a user can generate, the amount of information from his own mobile phone. First one, volume. Easily we can understand that volume in terms of size. People will tell that a large amount of data is existing, so we call it as big data. But actually, these are going to be the potential characteristics of big data that defines it from the traditional computer system. Now, size. Assume that, as I have told you, a user with lot of information from his mobile phone, if he can generate 40 exabytes of data, then with all the other sources he can generate more amount of data than that. So, volume can be defined as simply as a huge amount of data. Now, next one would be velocity. Velocity is nothing but we can easily understand it in terms of speed. Now, here how to understand that topic in our topic. Now, velocity would be something called as time it takes to access the data, time it takes to process the data, time it takes to store the data back. So, we call it as high speed accumulation of data. The next one would be variety of data. Now, here comes the picture where variety in the sense people will be generating a lot of data in different formats. People may transmit emails where they can attach their PPTs or Excels or audio files. They can be considered as variety of data. We will try to understand this part in this lecture further in a detailed way. We are just differentiating it as a formats of various sources of the data. Next one would be veracity. This will be treated as a degree of information will be coming into the data base where lot of information is being accumulated, but this veracity plays a prominent role. This can be treated as the amount of data which has been acquired and that need to be processed, that need to be served for the multiple users based on their request. So, we can simply treat it as a degree of information available over there. Next one would be value. There will be huge amount of data available, but the thing is, what is the data which you need? For example, if I have 1000 TB of data available, but I would like to access only 10 GB of it. So, there I use a term called as a value. Data is more, but you need to pick up the most easy and useful information for you. So, extracting of that useful data. Okay, let us see now the different types of data that is available, out of which I would like to differentiate in a more easy way. Like assume that data is treated in terms of speed, velocity, that is speed, that is velocity, size, that is volume, and extracting the information that is needed. I have categorized that into 3 different parts. First one is unstructured data. Assume that what exactly unstructured data is. Every day user has been generating different information in the form of audios, videos, text files or PDF files, which will be coming into this category where this model is not having any kind of fixed structure or any kind of a standard model to store or retrieve the data. So, almost information stored here would be 80% of data would be coming under unstructured data. Now, coming to the next one, that is semi-structured data, where information will look like unstructured data, but here you can only find 20% of data that will fall into unstructured manner. because information will be coming from different sources. It will not follow any kind of a structured data model, but it will follow some system or mechanism related to the traditional storing system. Next one would be structured data, where you can see data has been organized in an easy way. That means this structured mechanism will follow a particular model to store the data or a particular traditional mechanisms to retrieve or to process the data. Different applications of big data. Before I start the applications part, I would like to give an insight of a very easy and example that will be used in your daily life, that is Netflix. There will be large number of users that are subscribed for Netflix. Assume that the number would be almost around 1 million people. If 1 million people are subscribed to Netflix, assume that they have been watching different kind of videos like seasons, like movies, for different languages they have been watching over there. Now what is application part of big data will do here? For example, if I watch a movie that is related to action today, tomorrow when I just log into my account again, it suggests me that list of films that are related to that genre. So then a user can sit before the machine without searching for the movies. This is a best application for the big data. Now coming into an insight of a list of different kind of applications that big data will support. First one, medical industry, that is healthcare industry. Lot of amount of data is also being generated from the healthcare industry. For example, if a user is going or if a patient is going for the hospital, then there may be lot of diagnosis will be going on where he can only be diagnosed with a certain amount of number of tests, or he can be diagnosed with very advanced tests like MRI scannings or any kind of reports that will be generated over here. That can also be treated as large amount of data generating from the healthcare industry. Now, next one would be fraud detection system. For example, I am using a mobile phone at a location X at 12 p.m. I have withdrawn an amount of 5,000 from my ATM. Assume that exactly within 1 hour at different location which is 100 kilometers away from my place, where I have withdrawn an amount of 10,000, which is not even possible for a person to go there. So it within an amount of very less time. So I treat it as a fraud. So that information can be detected using big data. Next one would be homeland security, where information from different sources or different locations you can treat it as a security part to store the information. Next one would be trading. Every day lot of information will be generated from the stock exchanges also here over, where people will buy the shares, sell their shares, and they'll do a lot of transactions in the trading. So that will also be stored under big data. And now next one would be what will I get? A student may think that what will I get when I go for this course big data. So I'd like to give a list of different job opportunities that a big data may contain. First one would be business analyst and data scientist, data engineer, data visualization consultant, and data analyst. These are some list of profiles where student or a big data aspirant can get into picture. Now coming to this, we have different companies that have been made, a small slideshow where you can see list of companies that will be recruiting big data engineers. Now we have Google, Siemens, and we have LinkedIn, Wipro, we have Oracle, we have Amazon, we have Deloitte, we have Accenture, we have HCL. These are all multinational companies where they'll be recruiting different people from big data backgrounds based on their information. Now let's get into the part of summary, like what we have gone through in this whole lecture. Let's summarize the points, what we have learned in this lecture. First one would be, we have understood the definition of big data, what actually a big data is, how much amount of data that is being generated, and we got information related to sources of big data, that is from which source a data is being generated, and we got some information related to different types of characteristics as well as types of data that exist. So to just recollect what we have learned, I have made some short questions over here. So you can go through and you can understand, you can recollect the information in a way so that you can answer that. First one would be list different characteristics of big data. As I have told you, there are total number of 5 different characteristics that exist for the big data. So first one would be normal volume, velocity, variety, veracity, as well as value. These 5 values will be treated as a potential characteristics for a big data. Next one would be, what are the different types of data that we have? As I told you, we have a structured data which will follow a kind of or a fixed set of a data model or a processing mechanism to store, process, or retrieve the data. We have semi-structured data which will look like unstructured data, but 20% of data only will be in the part of unstructured matter. Next one would be unstructured data, where information out of 100%, 80% of data would be falling into unstructured data, where it will not follow any kind of traditional models or any processing mechanisms to store the data. Thanks for watching the lecture. See you all in the next class. Thank you.